Thank you all so much for joining us. I'm entitling today's workshop, Tools to Sharpen Your Job Search Strategy. Learn how to build relationships that will help your career using both conventional and unusual methods. Discover effective communication techniques and explore calendar management and research tools. Learn why job seekers should always consider themselves in marketing and sales. We're going to learn how to better market ourselves and sell ourselves during this presentation. And it's led by Ray Mascola, who's a business development advisor, a coach, and he's the owner of Targeting Sales Growth. So all 60 of us or so, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Ray for joining us here today. And Ray, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Robert. As Robert said, I'm Ray Mascola. I'm going to go through some slides with you here and talk about some tips that have worked for me that I've used to achieve my goals, and talk about some things around focus and passion, some practical information that hopefully works for you. Next slide, please. Okay, just a quick slide on me. I've got a background in software sales management, and over the last several years, I've created a company called Targeting Sales Growth. I work very differently than the software business I worked in the corporate world. In a home-based business, I'm all over the country. I use Zoom to work with clients. And then I'll tell you a little bit my story, how I started with helping my mom who needed home care to creating a business, which has become somewhat of a passion for me. And as we go, you may find things that help you, some other things that might not be your style, but I hope this is informative for you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay. My first line here, we're all in sales, in the fact that you're promoting your skills to solve problems. You're promoting what you do, that you're unique over, say, other people. And it's a basic mindset to have that we're all in competition. We just have to understand what our unique skills are. We all have our unique skills, and how they help you and help your prospective employer solve problems. But we all need a strategy to do that, particularly if we're alone, talking to other people, finding out what works for them. So the point I wanted to mention here is posting on Facebook, emailing, texting. They're good starters, but you have to understand who your prospective clients are and how to get to them and why they would listen to you. A term I use here is, which we used in sales, was a trusted advisor, that you have some information that can be valued by your employer or your prospective employer. So not just talk about where you've been and what you've done, which I'm sure are very valued, but how can you apply that to become a valued asset to an employer? We'll talk about that more. Next slide. Okay. So an outbound sales strategy is that we're always searching to find out what we can do to help us move to where we want to go in our goals. And the fact is, we have to have specific goals. Now, the thing I do religiously is I work with my calendar, my Outlook online calendar. So if a prospect tells me, call me back in July, I say, what would be good for you? Third week in July, it's in my calendar. I have a note that tells me that he said to call back. We're going to talk. Oh, I'm going to bring up X. I'm going to probably contact him or her by email and then follow up a couple days later. The key is you're always following up. If you don't have a next step, you have no prospect. And the idea to stay motivated is to kind of continually understand what's the next step in your process. And it may be that you've reached as far as you can go on that particular process for a while. They say call back in 6 months, that or check back, then you make sure you've noted that, and then go on to your plan B, C, D, and whatever. Some of the things we're going to talk about here is networking, what you're doing right now, particularly if you're working at home. You want to make sure you're talking to other people. Physical meetings is good, is necessary. Online meetings are okay, but you want to continually have a section of your work week highlighted for networking. Volunteering, we'll talk about that and why that needs to be, at least for myself, a part of my overall plan. And then takeaway points. What are you getting, hopefully, from this presentation, and what are you getting from any networking or any activity that you do? You want to think, well, what can I do? What can I take away from this conversation that'll help me in my goals? Next slide, please. Okay. One of the things I say here in terms of motivation, you have to kind of think of what needs to work for you and then how to act on it. The conceptual is a start. How do you feel about that? How does it tie into your plan? And then what are you going to do in terms of action? I put down in terms of your weekly campaign, at least for myself, it has to have these three components in it. I do some work, I do some fun, and then I exercise in some way, walk, whatever you do, but just to get the blood flowing and to work and to have those three components. And then in terms of managing your strategy, you want to be doing this 40 hours a week. Now, that doesn't mean 40 hours of applying for jobs, but 40 hours of your overall calendar of activities. Some of it may be research, some of it may be networking, the volunteer part I talked about, and all this goes into your calendar. If I'm going to the gym, I put that in my calendar because I want to make sure that's in there, along with the research part and maybe a phone interview, a physical interview, whatever, just to kind of stay organized. And then you want to figure out what's the priority. And one of the things we want to make sure we don't do is stay busy for the sake of busy. We want to make sure that what we're doing ties into some sort of goal that we have created. As I say, we're looking for research. If you want to come across as an asset, you've got to do the research on your prospective companies. There's a lot of ways that you can do that, and we'll go into it. In terms of tools, I use an Outlook calendar. I use a spreadsheet to track financial parts. You may have some tool to track how you're keeping up with different companies. You want to make sure that you have a compilation of people that you're working with that might be helpers, might be referrals, might be prospects, it might be fellow networkers, people that you connect with, and all of that. That's what helps me. Let's try the next slide, please. Okay, I have a couple of slides on communication. I've been in sales all my life, but whatever you do, I really believe that we all need to focus on communication. The point I'm bringing up here is we learn to read, we learn to write. The part that many people, including myself, don't spend a lot of time on is listening. If you're working with other people, whether it's networking, prospective client, whatever, the better you are at listening, the more effective you're going to be in terms of developing relationships and getting to your next step. The point there is most of us don't have a formal background in listening. What I say here is ineffective styles, asking questions and answering their own question. It's thundering where I am right now. So people might say, oh, is it rain enough for you? That's kind of a throwaway line. People all do it, but, we're looking for questions that can solicit a response that creates a dialogue, not a monologue. And then closed-ended questions don't create a conversation, which is what you want. And then many people are impatient. They'll cut into the other person's time because they want to think that they're more important, or they're making an observation without letting the other person finish what they have to say. These are ineffective. And the idea is, as a networker, we're looking to build relationships, maybe get information that'll help us, and then just as important, find out how we can help them. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to date myself a little bit. Stephen Covey was a highly respected, highly visible business guru in the 90s, into the 2000s. And he created a book, very successful, very highly regarded, called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I suggest you might take a look at it. And he had different chapters, and he calls those chapters habits. And one of the one that resonates with me the most is called Seek First to Understand and Then to Be Understood. So if we have that mindset, we're first reaching out to understand what the other person is trying to say. And after that, then we talk about what we want to understand, as opposed to, you really don't understand. What I was trying to say is, we all want to make sure we're understood. Our needs and our preferences are understood by the other person. If we turn it around and look to understand what the other person has to say or what's important to them before we pivot to ourselves, that can build you volumes in terms of relationships and volumes in terms of helping you get to where you want to go in your goals, whether it's building a business, getting a job, or whatever your goal is. And the point is, it's obvious that most people like to speak before they like to listen. Or most people are only partially listening, waiting to see when they can jump in. This has got to be familiar to you. It's familiar to me. And I'd go back to the seek first to understand before wanting to be understood. Next slide, please. Okay, so closed-ended questions don't really, the whole key here is it doesn't solicit a response. It's kind of a yes or no. Would you like vanilla or chocolate? Or maybe, how about just saying, what flavor would you like? Are you feeling better today? Yes, no. Have you completed your homework? As opposed to how much more homework do you have to do? And a lot of people say this, are you all set? Kind of, they're looking for you to say yes so they can move on. So the idea is closed-ended questions don't get you a conversation which can help you learn more about the other person and help you at some point after you develop that relationship, perhaps find that person can be a resource to you after you've been a resource to them. Okay, let's move on. I think we jumped ahead. Just go back one. Okay. We want to get to slide 9, open-ended questions. Maybe they're not in order.
So Ray, it looks like it goes from 8 to 10.
Uh-oh. Well, then I'm just gonna have to talk to, why don't we, okay, I missed the slide then somehow. Let's just go to number 10 and I'm gonna leave it there for a second.
Okay.
Okay, apologize for this. After close-ended questions, I have a slide that apparently I didn't send to Robert on open-ended questions. This is the real key. You want to ask questions that start with how, what, where, when, questions like that open up the conversation. And the slide you don't say, what are you planning to buy today? When will you complete your project? How will you help our company if you hire to work for us? Question you may have heard before. Where do you get your leads from? What is it you like about Costa Rica? Or you could say, what is it you like about whatever? And these are type of questions that open up the conversation. And then the key is for you to have the patience and the focus to listen to the answers of the open-ended questions, because this requires patience, because people are going to really talk more about things that are important to them. And remember, this might be a networking colleague, a potential resource, an influencer that can help you where you want to go. So the open-ended questions will give you information, and it becomes a habit for you to ask how, what, why, where, when type questions, which can really get to a conversation that in the end may provide dividends for you, because in that conversation, there may be something that helps you along your way. So the next part of this on the slide 10 is Stephen Covey, remember the business guru, said, set aside your autobiography. What he meant by that is you don't want to, we're all proud of the things we've accomplished, and we're all proud of the things we want to do. So we don't want to focus on that unless it's applicable to the conversation at hand. Okay. We want to talk about goals, accomplishments, in if they're apropos to what we're talking about now. Not your long history, but your skill set that you can apply to the goals or the needs of your prospective employer. What you see in the slide here is some things about closed-ended questions. They give you facts. They're certainly easy. They move right along, and we're in a rapid mindset society today. Twitter, so many of these things are just little blurbs of conversation. The whole idea of open-ended questions and open-ended conversations is not the mindset that we necessarily have in 2023. They're longer conversations. You're asking the other person and yourself to reflect and think. And this is a good test in terms of problem solving, that you think the thing through, you reflect. It gives opinions and feelings. And if you're talking to the other person, getting opinions and feelings, you're understanding what they care about and what their priorities are. And at the other end of the challenge is you're giving up control of the conversation to the other person, and you're participating by listening. And then after hearing some information or some thoughts or opinions, you're asking another open-ended question that hopefully gets you during the conversation information that can help you to help the other person or to help you as a resource from them. Let's move on, please. Okay. Again, I've got some more thoughts on listening and communication. When I have an appointment with somebody, and they blow the appointment, say a client or a prospective client, I take the high road. I listen to the fact that they had fire drills, they couldn't focus on their calendar, or they got too busy. And the idea is, with empathetic listening, you're understanding what the other person has to say, not just hearing the words, but understanding the message, the feelings, the opinions, the concerns of the other person. And the whole idea is you're slowing down. You're not making quick judgments because you're gathering information. You're gathering information, you're gathering thoughts, feelings, and this helps you eventually respond well because you've understood the other person's concerns and priorities, and then you can make some very astute, insightful responses that can again build that relationship and help you to help them, or help you to understand how they may help get you to where you want to go. So empathetic listening, focusing on understanding what the other person has to say. And it may take some time because they may be convoluted. Some people may be very easy to follow, and they have very sequential mindset, or some people may be all over the place and have some sort of accent, have some sort of disjointed approach to following up. But the idea is, if you get skilled at this, it can help you in volumes, because a lot of people don't do this. So you would be unique. Let's move on. Okay. So the idea here, again, we're in networking mode, we're maybe in job seeking mode, we're in gathering mode, using people to try to become resources for you in your goal. And if we really listen to the other person, the payoff that you see here is we become skilled at very effective, insightful responses, because we've learned and understood what the other person has to say through our open-ended question process. And then this can apply, by the way, in life, personal relationships, as well as business. It leads to a deeper understanding. It leads to conveying that you care about what the other person has to say. And it may, and in the process, you're picking up what their priorities are and what their passions are. And again, when you get skilled at this, you can be able to understand what the other person's intentions are, what their goals are, because you've understood what their priorities and passions are. And we don't, the last line on this slide is whether it's a personal conversation or a business conversation, you can't really advise somebody or recommend something until you really understand what they care about and what their level of interests are. And again, having this and developing the skill site, this skill can help you in your life in general and in your business life. They really become intertwined. Let's go on ahead. So, again, I'm in sales. I try not to just focus on sales, but there is something called a sales prospecting funnel. And you can take this mindset in your life in general. You have a pool of unqualified prospects, or it might be a pool of unqualified leads, or it's just a pool. And your first goal is take these unqualified resources and filter out and find out where those qualified prospects might be. In other words, people that can help you in your goals. And you have to have an understanding of what you need help with as you go through this unqualified part. See, you can really get distracted if you spend a lot of time on people or resources or companies that don't tie into what you want to do. So the first step is to have some sort of filter that you apply because it ties into your goals. In terms of taking suspects to prospects, long ago, I like to tell this story. Long ago, when I was in corporate sales, I came back from a call and talked to the VP of sales about my sales appointment that just happened. And I thought I had a hot lead, but after asking after being grilled by the VP, he told me, you don't have a prospect, you have a suspect. In other words, they're not really a prospect if they're not really ready to buy our product. They haven't done an analysis of their needs. They don't have the funding. You haven't talked to the right decision maker. That's a term we haven't used. In networking, you have to find out who makes the decision. There may be people that can help you in terms of influencing what you do. There may be people that can help you in terms of providing resources. But you also need to know, when you're talking to somebody, what really is their role. They could be a recommender, but in the final analysis, you need to connect with that person or persons who makes decisions that can impact your goals. As we go further down the funnel, they have to understand, if they're looking to hire you or hire somebody, what are the problems that they have that they haven't been able to find a solution for? Maybe because they don't have the people internally that have the skill set. But the thing is, the point there is the issues need to be identified. If they haven't identified what the problems are that you potentially can fill if you came on board with them, then they clearly haven't justified why they would hire you. The next step is your proposal. That's where you've talked to a lot of people, you've done your research, you have some sort of recommendation on what you would do if you were hired to address or begin to address the major issues that you found out about as you went through this job process. And the next step is getting feedback on that course of action. It may be feedback on your proposal. It may be feedback on what your answer to the question, what you would do if you're hired by them, and have some sort of an agreement so you know that you're a very active candidate for the position. And then the last one is getting a new client if you're in your own business, or getting the job if you're looking to be hired by somebody else. Next slide, please. Okay, I always talk about expanding our comfort zone. Now, social media, to me, is a double-edged sword. It's where we live today, but you don't want to be buried in social media. You have to be continually focused on what you're doing, because you can get distracted because there's so much stuff out there. So you don't want to just build, if the idea is to make connections to help you in your business networking process, you have to constantly be clear as you're using, say, social media, how would this person or this organization or this publication help me? Because it's very easy, as I'm sure we all know, to get distracted. So using social media effectively and carefully, and constantly be able to ask yourself, how would this help me get to my next goal? I happen to look at business publications. There's a Boston Business Journal. There's other publications in your particular field. You can look at those. One of the things I have up here is you can go online and look at investment companies. The reason you might do that is to see what businesses are these companies investing in. If you're working for a small company or prospectively working for a small company, where do they get their funding from? And if they, you don't want to go into business with somebody that's on a real shoestring. So it can work two ways. If you've got a target company, learn all you can about them and who's funding them. Or if you're looking in your particular vertical market, look at investment companies and see who's investing in companies in your vertical market. It might be a company that you're interested in, or it might be a company that's a competitor of the company you're interested in. So networking, find industries in your field, business associations, could be Chamber of Commerce meetings, which can be effective. LinkedIn, I use LinkedIn, which is a business networking entity, if you don't know. But going to meetings, and it can be tricky. You don't want to go to meetings just to busy up your calendar. You want to understand why you're going there and what you hope to get out of that meeting. So here we're talking about expanding our comfort zone, getting out beyond your home, but having it focused on understanding how this social media site or this publication or this organization can help you in your goals. Constantly ask yourself that question. Next slide, please. I just put this up here. You can do all sorts of searches on LinkedIn. And this just is an example to show CEOs. You can do searches on LinkedIn. If you're not conversant with LinkedIn, there are programs you can take to, or workshops to get comfortable with LinkedIn. So there's all sorts of searches and you can narrow it down to find individuals on LinkedIn that could be resources for you. And we'll move on. And this goes back to, it's always a fine line between making sure you're active and making sure it's not just busy, because you want to understand why the activity that you're doing helps you in your business. And I did say, have time for fun, have time for exercise, have time for volunteering, but you label those activities as such. When I used to go to a lot of physical meetings, which maybe people don't do as much, you want to have your elevator pitch finely tuned. Of course, we understand you're in an elevator with somebody else. What do you do, Ray? And I have a 20-second, real clear explanation of what I do. And then if it goes further, you want a real clear explanation of what you're looking for or what you might request from the other person. Again, we have Chamber of Commerce have mixers. There's other links that you can go on to make connections. And the state has career centers. You can go in there to use their resources. There's training services in there. There's employment services on there. I just put it up there as another component that could help you in your search. So we'll move to the next slide. So you may get asked this question, what do you do besides looking for a position? Or, there might be organizations that have a community-focused component to their mission. They would most likely ask you these questions. So understand how you could volunteer, give back a little bit of your time. It could be part of your weekly motivation. It's certainly part of your communication skills practice. Find out something you could do weekly or bi-weekly or whatever that helps other people. As I say here, you're doing something because it's the right thing to do. It's something where maybe you have a skill that you can use in a voluntary setting. It might help you in terms of building activities, communication skills, networking. It may come out of that volunteer activity that it helped you in your business goals. And it also it feels good to help other people for the pure aspect of just helping people, because we all need to think of other people besides ourselves. So I put volunteering up there as something I try to think about on a weekly basis and try to do something about it on a weekly basis. Last slide. So we talked about empathetic listening to build relationships. It's a way of understanding other people, and it's a way of getting support in your job strategy as you may be helping them or they may be helping you. You want to be able to you want to be clearly able to understand what you're looking for as you reach out to other people, knowing that you also have to think about how you can help them in addition to them helping you. So doing your research about your target companies or the target people that you're talking to, understand who they are, what they do, what they care about, so that you can make insightful observations that builds up your cachet, and it may help you get to where you want to go in terms of your networking and your job search. I always say, always have a next step. In other words, what's the next thing you're going to do? And it can't be just to wait for them to do the next step, because you have to, I'm timeline oriented. So if you don't have a timeline and a specific action, the networking may not go anywhere. So here's my information. You can contact me by email or by phone if I can help you in any way. I hope this presentation is helpful. There's some things on here that might be more relevant or might resonate with you more than other things, depending on your style and what your networking is all about. But I hope you are successful and that you have a good summer in terms of getting to where you want to go. And thank you for the opportunity to talk with you.
So folks, let's give Ray a big virtual round of applause for his presentation. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording and we can go into Q&A. Just give me 10 seconds.